Hey everybody, Alex here, healthhacksreview.com. Infrared sauna expert as well as expert in a variety of sort of different health equipment and cutting edge products. So a lot of people work with me because they're very confused about what they're buying, and I do sell all kinds of brands. Anyways, this video is it's kind of a shorter video from the standpoint that I just want to make a brief commentary on why I prefer full spectrum saunas, and why I don't think they are, absolutely always 100% necessary if somebody's on a tighter budget. But I do think in general they're more ideal, the option to pick if you do have that choice, because your budget allows for it. And so I will be doing other videos that will be fully exploring near infrared in particular, and a little bit of mid-range. And the reason for that is because there's different now trending sort of near infrared, or quote near infrared, when it's really more mid-range. And I'll cover that in some of those videos. But there are these types of different emitters and heaters now out there dedicated to more that direction of the micron range, with different brands of saunas. And things aren't always what they appear to be, and the education in these areas, there needs to be better, clearer information. And so I will be putting out some pretty good info uh, in regards to that, to clear up some misconceptions and what some companies have claimed about the others, and so on and so forth. So this video though, full spectrum. Okay, so in general, a full spectrum sauna would technically be in the vital range of infrared, let's say 1 micron range, or a little less than 1, but either way, 1 up to maybe 15 microns, 22 microns. They'll sometimes say that's the vital range, but normally we're kind of focusing more from 12 to 15 max, okay, and that's that range. And it's broken up between near, mid, and far. It's also known as IRA, type of infrared, which is shortwave, IRB, which is like mid, okay, and IRC, which is long. And those are the terms that if you Google them around, you'll see all these different sorts of manufacturers that make different types of infrared heaters for a variety of different sorts of commercial purposes, indoors, outdoors, industrial applications, so on and so forth. And I did put like a couple articles, for example, white papers, down below in the description video, so you can kind of get a sense of things. And that the fact that they've been studying and doing these white papers, and even studies on all the different wavelengths for these different types of applications, be it human or products, things like that, for a long time. And we can actually take some of that information and apply it to the sauna industry and get a little bit more insight and accurate information sometimes. So in general, I say it's more ideal to go with the full spectrum if you have it in your budget, because generally they're 1,500 to a couple thousand more for full spectrum. Okay, again, where you're at least hitting some of the wavelengths. So what we see is that with short wave infra, which is IRA, okay, and by short wave, if you actually see the wave, there's more peaks kind of going in a shorter space, basically over time. And longer wave is more like this. It's more stretched out, elongated. There's not as many peaks in it, and dips, valleys. Okay, it's a very simple way to put it if you're visually looking at it. So these different sorts of wavelengths, it's wavelength that is actually responsible for a lot of the ways, or the mechanism of which infrared absorbs into your tissues. Okay, so in your skin, you have your dermis, epidermis, you have different layers, okay, of tissue, going from like skin, which is mostly water and the surface. We go into fat layers, and we also go into like nerve endings and blood supply and things at deeper levels. Okay, so wavelength is the main thing responsible for the depth of penetration, and also to a certain degree the type of heat that is transferred to the object, or in this case the human body. And so with shortwave IRA, this is something that is more transmissive in the term, but also reflects off of the water and the skin most. In fact, really short wave near infrared actually reflects off the skin not far off, especially lighter colored skin, not that far off from snow, which is extremely white, right, when we think of snow. But that's because snow is mostly water, right? It is water. And so again, our skin, especially at the surface, is 80% water, okay? So a lot of it actually reflects off, and that does have to do with, by the way, if you thought it, how close the proximity of that near-infrared emitter is. But anyways, a lot of it reflects off, okay? So that's one thing with that form of infrared. And it does then pass through, and some of it transfers and turns into heat. Okay, so and then some of it kind of provides energy and stimulation to the body in a non-heat kind of way. And in general, shortwave, given enough time, will be able to more directly stimulate muscle and fat layers. Okay, and so mid-range also reflects off the body more than the long wave far, but is definitely more readily absorbed. It goes like 3 to 7 microns, 3 to 6, 3 to 7, either way, kind of in the middle there. And that absorbs more readily than the short wave, okay? And so with long wave far, it is most absorbed, and we know that from a lot of different studies, okay, by water and by skin. It doesn't reflect off. In fact, based on evolution or just how the body has designed itself, okay, over time we see that in general the body and the skin, the tissues have developed a sort of response, literally on a cellular level, to reflect naturally more shortwave and mid, and to accept and receive more far. Biologically proven, it's a fact. Now, some far infrared companies may say, well, there's your case, there's your proof. Far infrared's the best thing ever. Nature and evolution, you know, even proven, design it. Well, it's, you know, that's not exactly true. There still are benefits with getting some sort of energy deeper into the tissues, okay? And there's also benefits with super saturating the water and the more superficial areas of the skin, which is still fed by blood supply and hemoglobin, right? And the microcapillaries, microcirculation. There's still benefits to saturating those layers as well, very well, like really saturating it effectively. So the radiation is transferred into heat, that type of energy, very effectively with long wave. So again, there's advantages here to different levels and differences. Okay, now, so just understanding that very basic little piece of things, you can start to see how, depending on your health goal or health condition, there could be some advantages to getting more of this wavelength options that stimulate and get to the body tissues differently here and more uniquely, okay? At the same time, though, again, you have to be very wary of people who will just flat out be so absolutist about things, you know, like because this, and this near is the best, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. For example, while long wave far infrared, okay, which are the most common things you see out there with like the carbon saunas, for example, they mainly put that out there, that wavelength spectrum. While it does absorb very, very well into the water and the superficial tissues, keep in mind that the whole blood and circulatory system, lymph, water, etc., is all interconnected. So even if it's super saturating more into the surface of the body, the long wave far, you have cooler areas of your body. And your body has a circulatory system. okay? Both with the lymph that circulates and the blood, okay? And so what happens through is that hotter heat and will stimulate the body, and the nerve system and the brain will then send the blood and the fluid and diffuse and move that heat into other areas of the body that are cooler. Okay, this is partly how it warms up your core body temperature, infrared in general, no matter the spectrum. Okay, just through some of the mechanisms of how the body works. But the point that I'm making is that even if you do far infrared carbon, it's more superficial, so on and so forth, your body's still taking that energy, okay, through the hemoglobin, through the water, etc. And it's moving it where? It's moving it deeper into the body. So think about that for a second. And what's deeper in the body? Muscle, fat, your organs. I mean, anyways, it's anything deeper than the skin is my point. It's going that direction. And it's also going to other surface areas of the skin as well. Anyways, so my point is that to say like mid-range is better or near is better, you know, when we try to get so isolated on one thing, we also do see a little bit of overlap here because of how the body responds. So the conversation is not just exclusively about this emitter and this infrared as if it's its own thing. It's also how the body responds and adapts to it, right? So that's why, in the case of getting a lot of just far, you can actually get some of the benefits and effects of if you were getting like an exclusive mid-range emitter that's going more deeply into the body. You can get a similar effect over time with the far, because again, of how the body works with its own circulatory system, and it will still move that heat and that infrared energy, okay? So you can start to see now that there are a little bit of overlapping benefits. There are some similarities. I would say probably the most different in how the infrared absorbs, especially in a shorter space of time, is going from like a very low near infrared to a far, and the difference between the two. And again, depending on your health goals, there could be some, you could see more benefits or changes in your body faster by getting more of one wavelength. But again, all of them are working synergistically together. So for example, if you could imagine that from your skin going down, you have these different layers in the dermis. You're ending up in fat and muscle and all these sorts of different stuff, nerve tissue, okay. So in general, for a variety of different health conditions, but let's just say for now, fat loss, okay, losing fat, your body is going to use several different layers or aspects of its system to accomplish that, okay? It's not just all going to work on your fat layer, okay? There's other layers above the fat, there's layers below the fat that will actually assist in the process of fat mobilization, and especially when stimulated by infrared. Okay, so what am I saying here? I'm saying that yes, you can get fat loss mobilization with near infrared. Yes, you can get it with mid exclusively as well. And yes, you can get it with far exclusively as well, because in your body, all these systems are interconnected. Really, really what I'm saying is that there's more efficient ways to do fat mobilization. And again, I'm just using fat mobilization as one example. You could replace that with several other types of health goals or conditions, and the same concept and principles are true. So your body uses several different levels of system to get things going, okay? And so the point of that is that ideally, you would stimulate all the different layers and systems of the body in and around the fat cells, or the fatty layer, or the brown fat deposits. Okay, you stimulate multiple levels, if you could, with different wavelengths. And there you then see, for sure, a stimulation at different levels and an accelerated effect, okay? So really one of the advantages of having multiple full spectrums is an efficiency factor with these different sorts of health goals or conditions. It's a big, big factor here, okay? And because remember, again, your body will diffuse some of these wavelengths and either pass it up to the outside of the body. So for example, if we're just using near exclusively, it would go deeper into the tissues, not absorb. It would reflect a lot on the surface, but it wouldn't really absorb into heat very effectively in the surface. It would be really mainly more kind of going into the deeper layers of the dermis. But at the same time, it would be building up more heat in a deeper layer, and then that would then be diffused and moved by the body more into these superficial levels. It would be going up and out of your body to the superficial level, okay? And vice versa, if you're just doing long wave far, we're going from outside, and your body is moving it inwards, okay? So again, with all these sorts of different health conditions and health goals, doing more full spectrum is just kind of like that's at least the way I see it. And sure, it's an efficiency factor, but yes, there are studies and all that kind of stuff on the different wavelengths. There's probably more so with the near, I would say, and far end of things. But the bottom line is this: they do stimulate the body differently. They've seen different sorts of health benefits to stimulating the different layer of the body differently. But there's never really been studies that have examined multiple wavelengths for the same type of condition and kind of in that study looked at them side by side. Okay, so tracking them side by side. So just think about that for a second. So we could say that like near infrared's the best for blood pressure. Okay, good, whatever, it doesn't matter what it is. We could say it's the best thing for blood pressure because of these studies over here. And that is great that those studies exist, for sure. But there's not really studies that then say, okay, well, we were also comparing in this study a mid-range emitter or a device or an LED or whatever that's doing a mid-range wavelength, and we're looking at these side by side, and based on this cross-correlation looking at the two, the near seems to have better efficacy, better therapeutic outcomes. Or a long wave for far and for whatever. Not really studies that are doing that. So just keep that in mind. Don't be so like totally, well, here's all the studies for this wavelength, so this must be the best. We run into the same problem, same issues with the photobiomodulation industry, laser therapy, LED therapy. Some laser companies and these different types of devices, they say the same thing. Our wavelength is, here's all the studies, this is the best. And then vice versa, you see this other wavelength showing similar results and saying this is the best one over here. So there is, bottom line, within the vital range of infrared, overlapping benefits, and they stimulate the body very similarly because of the one thing is that the body is responding. It's how the body's adapting depending on what level and layer is being stimulated. Everything is interconnected in the body, right? So that's part of why there's these overlapping similarities. And again, without studies that are cross-comparing, which would be very expensive and just haven't been done or whatever, that's why the studies are good and they are true and helpful, but we can't look at those and say, one wavelength is going to be absolutely necessary or needed for a specific type of condition or goal that you're achieving. But we know enough that we can say that each of the different areas of the wavelength do tend to have a little bit more of a stimulatory effect on a different level of the body and could potentially give you more efficacy or efficiency with working on whatever you need to work on. I don't know if that makes any sense. Hopefully I'm explaining that without getting too technical, and that at least helps you get a little bit more of a sense of the whole full spectrum thing. Now in other videos, we're going to kind of go into and dive into more the different sorts of emitter systems for mid, far, and near that we see out there. And there's different types of technologies. And as you can see, there's a science behind it into how heat transfers into the cellular level of the body is tied to wavelength. It's tied to efficiency rating. You always will want to ask a company for that, for their emitters. Efficiency and emissivity rating for their exact emitters, not on the components in the emitter, for the whole emitter. Okay, third-party organization testing on that, ideally. Emissivity, efficiency, Okay, these are the two terms for testing that are correlated with wavelength as one aspect, and that has everything to do with how effectively, or just in general, how a near-infrared emitter, a far, mid-range, whatever, is doing its job, how effectively it's stimulating some level or layer of the tissue, and the type of effect it is or isn't having on some other level or layer. Okay, we have to go back to specs. All right, and then that, so in other words, it should be, well, not totally easy for everybody, but you should be able to make an apples to apples comparison between this company's near infrared heater, for example, and this company's. Okay, but if you don't have those two specs, you can't make apples to apples. Okay, so for example, there was the classic comment that a president of one of the companies said, which was, we have this much more power, this much more wattage than this, same wavelength emitter over here. We have way more power. That's like saying if we had, first there's not even an apples to apples, it was like an apple and an orange, and then it's saying that basically that our apple is bigger than this orange. that's the logic. Our apple is bigger than our orange, so the apple is better than the orange. So when you bring it down to kindergarten logic like that, maybe like H3, H4, whatever, where we can make these value assessments, that's the crux of that argument, coming out from one of the presidents of one of these companies, which is pretty funny when you think about it. And maybe a little insulting as well for the viewers and the consumers out there. Anyways, that's something else to think about. So if you have any more questions about this, and remember I said this video was going to be super short. This tends to happen with me, so I'm sure you've gotten this by now. If you're tired of watching all my long videos, you can always reach out to me on healthhacksreviewed.com. Give me a call, send me questions. I can help you find the right brand for you and talk to you much more about your health as well. So thanks for watching.